Epic Enigmas. Welcome back, our esteemed learners and our guests. Today we are tackling Things Fall Apart by Chinua Achebe. We are taking the full book analysis from chapter 1 to chapter 25. I believe that we're going to take it together. Just have your good time, your good notebook. So the protagonist of Things Fall Apart by Chinua Achebe is a man known as Okongo, who is a Nigerian, a very respected warrior from the Umuofia clan. That is in chapter 1. Is in the lower Nigerian tribe. There is a part of 9 connected villages. In his youth, he brought so much honor to the village or to the clan by beating Amalinze the cat in a wrestling contest. It had been believed that Amalinze the cat, in his matches before, for 7 years, there was no man ever who had defeated him. So he was a very great fighter, and Okongo comes in and he fights against him and he wins. So in that chapter 1, we see Okongo's father being a very weak character, whereby Okongo does not want to be like his father Unoka. So the father of Okongo was Unoka, and Unoka, he was a man that was very poor. He could borrow money, he could borrow food, which meant that his wife and his children would run hungry overnight. And so Okongo hated the character of his father, Unoka. However, Unoka also, he was a good skilled flute player and had a gift and love, a gift of love and of language. Let us summarize chapter 2. This is a summary of chapter 2. In one night, in the town there is heard a very big cry, a ring of Ogin or Agog, and there is a request for all clansmen to gather in the market in the morning. At the gathering, Ogbuefi Ezehugo, a noted orator, announces that someone from the Bahino village had murdered the wife of Umuofia tribesman while she was in their market. And the crowd of the Umuofia clan expresses so much anger and indignation. Okongo henceforth is sent to Baino to deliver a message that they must hand over Umuofia, a virgin and a young man. And should Baino refuse to do so, the two villages, they must go to war. Umuofia had a very fierce reputation for his skill in war and in magic. So Okongo, being the protagonist, is chosen to represent the Umuofia clan. And earlier in the chapter, Okongo begins to remember his past victories, in which in one of his victories, he remembers having 5 human heads, which he had taken in battle. So Okongo is a very fierce man, is a man that has been in battle and he has been winning every time. So he drinks palm wine from the first head of one of the men that he had captured. Not surprisingly, from the fear, the Baino people, they agree to offer Umuofia team a young virgin and a 15-year-old boy whose name is referred to Ikemefuna. And the elders decide to turn him over to Okongo for a safekeeping and for instruction. In addition of Okongo being a skilled fighter, he is quite wealthy, and he has 3 wives and 8 children. Each wife has her own hut, and Okongo has a barn that is full of yams and shrine for his ancestors and his own hut that is called Obi. So Okongo fears weakness, unlike his father Unoka. So he associates his father, who associates his father with women. Yeah. So when Okongo was a child, another boy called Unoka Agbala, which is used to refer to women as well as to men who have not taken a title. That means that Okongo's father Unoka did not have any title deed. He never owned a land which his children could inherit. We are going next to chapter 3. So in chapter 3, we see Okongo built his fortune alone as a sharecropper because Unoka, his father, never left him an inheritance. Actually, in chapter 3, we see the reckless life that Unoka lived, that he never left inheritance for his children. And Unoka's son Okongo regrets having such a father, and he swears that it is an abomination to be poor on the earth. As a result, Unoka, that is Okongo, cannot count Unoka's help at all in building his own wealth. And so Okongo decides never to be poor at all. And he goes to the clansmen that are wealthy. One, he goes to Nwabikie, whereby Nwabikie gives him 800 seeds of yams to start a farm. So Okongo requests Nwakimbie to give him 400 seed yams, but because the man knows that Okongo is very hardworking, he chooses to multiply it by 2 and he gives him 800. So in that whole chapter, we see Okongo's hardworking farm, how he harvests a lot of yams, how he's blessed. And then we move on to chapter 4. In chapter 4, the clan decides that Ikemefuna will stay with Okongo. Ikemefuna is homesick and is scared at first. Remember, Ikemefuna is coming from the tribe of Baino. In chapter 1, we saw that there was a war in chapter 2, we saw that there was a war between Baino and Umuofia, and Umuofia requests to have a virgin woman and a son which is 15-year-old. Now the son is Ikemefuna, and the clan decides that Ikemefuna will stay with Okongo. And Ikemefuna is homesick and is scared at first, but Nyowe's mother treats Ikemefuna as his own child. Ikemefuna knows many stories that children have never heard before and possesses very many impressive skills which he shares to the children of Okonko. So to Okonko's delight, he becomes very happy of Ikemefuna. But Okongo is a strong man that believes that a man should not reveal out his emotions. And so in that same chapter, during the week of peace, Okongo notices that his youngest wife, Ojugo, he had gone to the market to braid his hair without cooking dinner. And so out of anger, Okongo beats the wife, and which is against the ordinances of the week of peace. And so the priest demands Okongo to sacrifice a nanny goat and a hen and to pay a fine of one length of cloth and 100 cowries shells, which they were used as the means of currency. And so we see Okongo, though he's a very strong man, he repents his sins and he follows the orders of the priest. We move on to chapter 5. In chapter 5, just before the harvest, the village holds the feast of the new yam to give thanks to the earth goddess, which they referred to him as Hani. Okongo does not care about feasts. Number one, he regards feasts as a matter of wastage of time or as a matter of idleness. So the women, they scrub their houses, their huts, they make sure that they are very clean, and they would throw away all the unused yams for the previous year. And so Okongo is not happy, he's very angry, and he chooses to fulfill his anger by looking for an excuse, and he beats his second wife, Ekwefi. And then after beating his second wife, Ekwefi, he decides to go to hunt with his gun. Okongo is not a good hunter because we see Ekwefi making a slide mark under breath that he has a gun, but the gun never shoots because he always misses the target. So Okongo hears the hard remark from Ekwefi, a wife, and he shoots towards her, but unfortunately he misses. So the annual wrestling contest comes a day after the feast, and Ekwefi enjoys the contest because he remembers that He was won by Okongo through the battle between Okongo and the cat. How Okongo defeated the cat. We see in chapter 6, the wrestling match is taking place in the village of Ilo or Common Green, and the drummers they lie in the field, and Maduka, the sons of Okongo's friend Obiereka, wins the match within seconds. So the two women are good friends. Cielo inquires about Enzima, whom she calls my daughter. And that's all. That's the plot of chapter 6. We go to chapter 7. Ikemefuna stays with Okongo for 3 years, and out of the result, he gains so much fire in Okongo's family. And we see this one brings a lot of development to Okongo's son, referred to as Nyoye, who becomes more masculine and changes his attitude to a man, hence pleasing Okongo. And Okongo is very happy about Ikemefuna because he knows that this impact has been brought by Ikemefuna. Though Nyowe misses his mother's stories, he knows that it pleases his father when he expresses disdain against women. To the village's surprise, locusts descends upon Mofia, and they come once in a generation, and they will return every year for 7 years before disappearing again. For a life pays a visit to Okongo, and he chooses not to enter the hut to share a meal. He informs Okongo that the oracle has declared that Ikemefuna must be killed, and Okongo must not take part in the boy's death because Ikemefuna calls Okongo his father. During the long home with the men of Umuofia, Ikemefuna thinks about seeing his mother. After hours of walking, this is after Okongo takes Ikemefuna and tells him that we are taking you back home. And while they are walking, Ikemefuna expects to meet a mother. He is thinking about the joy. And so Ikemefuna cries to Okongo for help. So during the long walk, Ikemefuna thinks about seeing his mother. The men attack Ikemefuna with machetes. Ikemefuna, fearing the men, he runs to Okongo for deliverance. So Okongo, when he sees Ikemefuna coming to him, despite that he loves the boy, he still wants to reveal his nature of a man, that of a strong man. So he takes out his sword and he casts down Okongo. He casts down Umuofia. That is Ikemefuna. When Okongo returns home, Nyowe instructs him that his friend is dead. Something breaks inside him for a second of time in his life because Nyowe was in very deep love with Ikemefuna. Afterwards, Okongo, in chapter 8, Okongo sinks into a deep depression and he feels weak and he cannot sleep or eat. This is because he has killed Ikemefuna, despite of how he loved Ikemefuna and despite of the orders which he was given not to participate in the killing of Ikemefuna. And so he chooses to go and look for advice from men in the village such as Obiereka. Obiereka congratulates him and he tries to revive his soul, and afterwards we see that Okongo's soul has been revived a bit because he was very disturbed for killing Ikemefuna. Chapter 8. So Ekwefi awakes Okongo very early in the morning and tells him that Enzima is dying. Enzima is the daughter of Ekwefi. And Okongo ascertains that Enzima has a fever and sets about collecting medicine. Enzima is the only Ekwefi's child in the center of the world. We see an history or a story in that chapter that Enzima has had 9 children and all of them have been dying out of fever. And so this one again now, Enzima is sick again and they don't know what to do. And Ekwefi and the 9 other children, they died in infancy She developed the habit of naming them symbolic things such as Omwiko, which means death, I below you. And so when Enzima was born, like Ogbaje children, she suffered many illness, but she recovered from all of them. And a year before the start of the novel, when Enzima was 9, medicine man named Ogabue found her in Uiwa, the small buried people that is Ogbaje's physical link to the spirit world. In chapter 10, the village comes together and they decide to hold a ceremonial gathering to administer justice. And the clan's ancestral spirits, which are known as Egugu, emerge from a secret house into which no man is allowed to step into the secret house. Egugu take the form of masked men, and everyone suspects that Okongo is among the Egugu men. And the women, the children are filled with fear, even though they sense that Egugu are merely men impersonating spirits. So from that chapter, we see the ceremonial gathering happening and the Egugu doing their cleaning ancestral ceremonies. In chapter 11, we see a conversation between Ekwefi and Ezima, and whereby we see Ekwefi telling Enzima, a child, a story about a greedy and a cunning tortoise, all of the birds which had been invited to a feast in the sky, and tortoise persuades the bird to lend him feathers to make wings so that he can attend the feast as well. And so we see that story happening in chapter 11. We are going to chapter 12. So in chapter 12, we see a story whereby Chihelo chooses to get Enzima on a back and to take him to the shrine for sanctification. And without saying a word, she takes Enzima to Ikwefi's hut and puts her to bed. It turns out that Okoko was extremely worried the night before, although he did not show it. So he forced himself to wait while before walking to the oracle's shrine. And when he found it empty, he realized that Cielo was making 9 rounds to the 9 villages. He was making 4 rounds to the 9 villages so that he returned home to wait. In all, he made 4 trips to and from the caves by the time he departed for the cave for the last time. So Okongo's family begins also to prepare for Obiereka's daughter Huri for a betrothal ceremony. That is all in chapter 12. In chapter 13, Ogwefi and Zehudu, death is announced in the surrounding villages with Ekwe, a musical instrument. And we see that Ogwefi was a very close friend to Okongo, and apart from being a friend to Okongo, he was a very great warrior who had acquired 4 titles for the clan. And a man who had titles for the clan deserved to be called a great man. And hence, out of his great riches, he was offered a very big and a great funeral. And the men beat drums and fire guns, and unfortunately, we see Okongo's gun accidentally goes off and kicks and Zehudu's 16-year-old son. Remember that we had Okongo having the problem of hunting. We move to chapter 14. Okay. After Okongo kills Ogufueli's son, Okongo is taken to exile in a mother's land for a period of 7 years. And in chapter 15, during the second year of Okongo's exile, Ombiereka brings some bags of koris to Okongo. He also brings some bad news. A village named Abame has been destroyed. This is because a white man arrived in Abame with an iron horse, which they found later that it was a bicycle during the planting season. So the villagers' elders consulted their oracle, which prophesied that the white man would be followed by others and would bring destruction to Abame. And so the villagers killed the white man and they tied his bicycle, that is which they discovered the earlier that it was a bicycle, to their sacred tree to prevent it from being used by any other person. And so when the white men came, they guessed their white man's fate and they decided to revenge back to Abame. And a few days later, Abame was attacked by men that were armed, and all the village of Abame was destroyed. So the reason for Obiereka's visit, apart from bringing the sad news, was also for bringing courage to Okongo, which was a business that they had together. We move on to chapter 17. So in chapter 17, this is after now the white men have come upon the land and they request for a piece of land on which they need to build a church. The village leaders and the elders, they offer them a plot in the evil forest, believing that the missionaries will not accept it. To the elders' amazement, the missionaries, they rejoice in the offer. The elders are certain that the forest sinister spirits will kill the missionaries within days. To their surprise, there is nothing that is happening to the white men. The villagers point out that sometimes the ancestral spirits will allow an offending man a grace period of 28 days before they punish his season. So actually the elders, they know that the sinister will punish the white men for intruding the evil forest. And so they give them a period of 28 days and then they be punished. But to their surprise also, to their surprise, the missionaries, they go on well increasing and there is no harm. The church thus wins more souls and more converts, including a pregnant woman whose name is Neka. Neka. Her 4 previous pregnancies produced twins, and her husband and his family are not sorry to see her go. So one of Okongo's cousin notices that Nyowe is one among the Christians and informs Okongo. When Nyowe returns, Okongo chokes him by neck, demanding him where he has been. And so Uchedu asks Okongo to let the little boy to go. We move again to chapter 18, whereby we see the church continues to gain more mastery upon the land, and the church is winning more converts from the Elfu Lefu, that is the titleless, the worthless men, the men that were despised in the clan. They are the men that the church is winning more day by day. Though they do not leave the service afterward, there is an uproar. But Mr. Kiaka family refuses to deny the outcast membership to the church. He argues that they will not die if they cut hair and break any other of the taboos that had been imposed by the elders. So the church has come with a doctrine that is against the doctrine of the elders. So the church is asking the villagers to leave all the taboos that they could carry, to leave all the ordinances that they were carrying before as the other men of the village. So Mr. Kiaga, a steadfast conviction, persuades most of the other converts not to reject their new faith simply because outcasts have joined them. So the clan's disbelief, one boasts that he killed the sacred royal Pidon. Okongo urges Mbata to drive the Christians out with violence, but the rulers and the elders decide to ostracize them instead. So Okongo bitterly remarks that this is a womanly clan. After announcing the new policy of ostracism, so the elders learned that the man who boasted of killing the snake has died of an illness. The villagers' trust in their gods is thereby reaffirmed and they cease to ostracize the new converts. We go to chapter 19. Okongo's 7 years of exile in Bata village is almost drawing into an end. That is the exile that was driven after he killed the sons of Ogbugwefi, the son of Ogbugwefi with a gun. So before he returned to Umuofia, he provides a large feast for his mother's kinsmen. He's very grateful for them, but regrets the missed opportunity to further increase his status and influence among his clan. He also regrets having spent time with such unmasculine people. At the feast, one man expresses surprise that Okongo has been so generous with his food, and another praises Okongo of his devotion to the kingship bond. He also expresses a concern for the younger generation as Christianity is winning people away from their families and their traditions. Chapter 20. So in chapter 20, Okongo has planned since his first year in exile to rebuild his compound on a larger scale. He also wants to add 2 more wives and to get more titles for his sons. And he has managed to get over Nyowe's disgraceful departure, but he still regrets that Enzima is a girl. Okongo loves Enzima so much to the extent of expecting him to be a man. However, after he returns to Omofia, to his shock or great surprise, Omofia has changed so greatly. The judicial systems, the role of the government, the church has grown so much in strength, and the white man is already the one in the governing system. So the government is very harsh and arrogant, and Okongo cannot believe that his clan has not been able to defeat the white man again. So Okongo observes that the white man is very shrewd because he came in peace and appeared to have benevolent interest in the Africans, and the Africans permitted him to stay. They discuss the story of Aneto, who was hanged by the government after he killed a man who had a dispute with. Aneto had been unsatisfied with the new court ruling system on the dispute because he had ignored a custom. Chapter 21, many people in Umofia will get to realize that they are not happy with the white man's influence. But besides them, there are also the followers or the converts who converted to follow the church. And already we see Mr. Brown, a white man missionary, is restraining his flock from antagonizing with the clan. He and someone called Ankuna, one of the clan's leaders, they meet often to debate and discuss their perspective on their different religious views and roles. Akuna, which is from the clan, who is a clan leader, explains that the clan also has just one god, whom they name Chuku, who created the world and no other gods. Mr. Brown, we see from the deep argument, replies that there are no other gods. He points to a cabin and states that it is not a god, but it is a piece of a wood. Akuna agrees that it is a piece of a wood, but wood created by Chupu. Neither converse and the other, but each lives with a greater understanding of each other faith. So we see Mr. Brown goes ahead and he builds hospitals and a school. That means that men will not be again treated by the local medicine, but they will be treated in the hospitals. And a school is provided where the villagers, they send their children to go to school and to begin to read and to write. And out of the arguments due to the hospital and the school, you get to realize that the church begins to win more souls. So Mr. Brown's health begins to fail and he leaves his flock. And Opongo's daughter attracts many suitors, but with grave disappointment, his clan takes no particular interest in his return. So Opongo was expecting a very warm reception when he was coming back to Mafia because of his masculine gender, because of his masculinity, because of the victory that and the glory that he had before. But coming to the ground, all things had changed, and the white man was the one who began to rule. So we see another man called Reverend James Smith, a strict and intolerant man, replaces Mr. Brown in chapter 22. In chapter 22, he demands that the utmost obedience of the letter of the Bible. So Mr. Reverend James Smith is after total obedience of the Bible, and he disapproves Mr. Brown's tolerant and unorthodox policies. So the more zealous converts are relieved to be free of Mr. Brown's policy of restraint. They then gather in front of the church to confront Reverend Smith and his fellow Christians. We move on to chapter 23. So Okongo is almost happy, despite that his clan did not agree to kill the Christians or to give them away. But again, Okongo also is displeased, seeing that the villagers, they are being swept away by the white man's religion and the white man's government. And so the rest of the villagers are on their guard on the next day, and they arm themselves with guns and machetes. The district commissioner returns from his tour, and he requests that the leaders of Muofia, they might meet with him. And so they meet again, they arm themselves with machetes. And in the meeting, after they discuss, the villagers, they put their guns down, ready to have a conversation with the district commissioner. After they put their machetes down, what happens is that so the district commissioner talks to them in a condescending terms that they should discuss on the church burning issues. No sooner did the villagers put their guns down, no than a group of soldiers surprised them with guns, and they were all arrested and taken to jail. When they were taken to jail, they were beaten thoroughly and they were tormented so that their bodies came out with wounds. So after they went to the court, the villagers came demanding for the release of their leaders, and they were asked to bring quarries, 200, a bag of 200 quarries, so that they can be released from the jail. The next chapter is chapter 24, the second last chapter, whereby we see after the villagers paid the 200 quarries, they were released. And when the prisoners returned to their village, the villagers, they were very ashamed even to look on them. They were overcome with a very much great tense because the way they appeared, they were thoroughly beaten and they earned wounds and whip marks on their bodies. So they announced another meeting on the following morning, and the meeting was adhered by all the villagers. And during the meeting, a white man came and he tried to disrupt the meeting. And when Okongo saw that the white man is trying to disrupt the meeting, Okongo picks a machete and he cuts the white man in 2 strikes. The last chapter is chapter 25. In chapter 25, we see the white men are very angry with Okongo, and the district commissioner arrives at Okongo's compound and he finds a small group of men sitting outside. He asks for Okongo, and the men tell him that Okongo is not at home. The commissioner asks the second time, and this time around, is very angry, and he tells them that if they don't cooperate, actions will be taken accordingly. And so they proceed to a small bush behind Okongo's compound, where they discover that Okongo's body is dangling from a tree. We get to realize that Okongo, out of his masculinity, he went ahead and he hugged himself because he never thought of himself being humiliated by any man. Obirieka explains that suicide is a grave sin and his clansmen may not touch Okongo's body. though they have sent strangers from a distant village to take the body down. So the district commissioner agrees to send his messengers to come and take the body of Onkongo and to bury it. And that is how the white man gained dominion in Nigeria. That marks the end of Things Fall Apart by Chinua Achebe. We have done a full book analysis from chapter 1 to chapter 25. In my next video, we are going to do character and characterization. We are also going to discover the thematic concerns in the book Things Fall Apart by Chinua Achebe. Meanwhile, make sure you subscribe to our channel, hit the subscription button, like and share the comment. See you on the next upload. Thank you.